Welcome back. Today we're going to do a quick chat on the KZ-AN01 Bluetooth ear hooks. So it's been a couple years since I've tried any of KZ's ear hooks. I have some older models. I mean, for me, my use case is if I'm outside and I want something wireless, I'm probably going to pick up a TWS set and not so much use one of my IMs on the Bluetooth ear hooks. But you know, I think that goes back a couple of years as well, and they weren't quite as good a couple of years ago. And I think just like KZ does with their IEMs and other things they do iterations of models, right? So every Bluetooth earhook model that comes out is sort of a slight improvement over the previous one. So I would say that AN01 is along those lines. It's an improvement over whatever the last set was, which I'm not even sure what the model name is. But this one is sort of featuring three different features, and you can kind of see them right there on the left. So it's ANC, LDAC, and Bluetooth 5.4. So the old ones were probably 5.3. They were probably aptX instead of LDAC and didn't have ANC. So this is probably the start of another iteration, and they will probably iterate over these three features on a different model and keep on improving it until something better comes along. But for now, this is the state of the art on their Bluetooth ear hooks and the most fully featured model that they have. So we'll kind of take a look at what it looks like in the case itself. I think this is the exact same case that they've probably used on their previous ear hooks. It's a little bit big, a little bit chunky, kind of much like KZ's stock cables. I think people want to see a change to the case, maybe something a little bit sleeker. But inside, the ear hooks look exactly as you would imagine. They look very similar, and it may be even the same shell as what they've used in the past. So this is what it looks like. It actually does have a button here, does have a microphone here, does have a microphone down there. So 2 microphones per side. That is going to give you some of the ANC as well as allow you to take calls. And the rest of it I think is pretty standard for their ear hook model. I don't think there's too much to really talk about on the physical side of. I don't think there's actually any changes there. I think all the changes are internal and what they've added feature-wise onto the internals. So what is it? Like I said, these are BT ear hooks. These do feature ANC. It does have a transparency mode. It does do LDAC, high-res codec. It does do Bluetooth 5.4. And I'll talk about my priority list of features and how I sort of rank these in my importance as opposed to KZ's is probably right here, but I think there's other things that are actually a little bit more important. And the first two are sort of red flags for me. They're kind of go, no-go decisions. And the fit. These particular set, I think I do like how this one tends to hold it in your ear a little bit more securely than I was expecting it to. And maybe there is a little bit of twist to it. There's a little bend to it, but the way it actually holds the shell in the ear is actually, it feels very secure and a really nice seal. And I thought they actually got that really, really well, really nicely executed. And perhaps it's the same as any other one. I just haven't tried them in a couple years, but I don't remember the fit being as nice as it is. It's just very secure fit and no background noise. So the background noise, the kind of the higher noise ceiling that the older earhooks models has used to kind of annoy me, and that's sort of why I stopped using them. There was always this kind of background hiss, and that is obviously probably gone away over the couple of years that I haven't tried them. So not really surprised that this one doesn't have any background noise, but it definitely was something from the past. And if you've ever heard that kind of fuzziness in the background, that is the noise floor or the background noise that I'm talking about that used to plague lots of older Bluetooth models. So I think these two, I think they kind of check those off. I think AN01 kind of passes on those without any problem. I think it kind of probably resolved those on models even before AN01. So LDAC, and I'll say that I am very used to using LDAC, whether it's on like my Q2Lex 5K, ES100, TWS. I've actually tried lots and lots of LDAC models. It is my preferred codec. I think aptX, lossless, or even adaptive is actually quite good. Samsung's codec is actually quite good. But for general purpose, if you're getting a TWS and you really want high-res Bluetooth transmission, LDAC is pretty much as good as it gets. So if you do have Android, this alone is going to justify the $36 that you're going to pay to pick up AN01. I think it's the actual best feature of AN01, especially if you are using high quality stream service like Tidal or Qbuzz or Apple Music on Android. Any of those that are doing like FLAC Music, Tidal actually switched over from NQA to FLAC. Qbuzz is basically only FLAC, and Apple Music uses their lossless. But these are all high quality music services, and it really pairs well with a high quality codec like LDAC. And LDAC, if you are into Android and you have developer settings turned on, you can push this one to 990 kilobit, the highest bit rate possible, and it kind of runs like a champ. And again, I think this kind of alone justified the price for me. Second thing I was really curious about was, is it really going to power PRX? So this is PRX. This is KZ's planar model from not that long ago. And when I tried it on my desktop amp, I thought it was probably the hardest planar that KZ's done in the wild. They made a move from doing really hard to drive planars, and they tended to iterate over those and make them a little bit easier to drive. And then PRX, I thought, actually reset and kind of put it back to being hard to drive again. So my first concern when I got this was it really going to drive PRX? Because it's actually a hard set to drive. So PRX is probably harder to drive than most IAMs you will ever try. On my phone, on my Samsung phone, I'm at about 130 out of 150 volume. So there is some headroom there, but not really much. Like you can actually push it to 150 and actually listen to it. I mean, it's certainly loud, but I wouldn't say it's over the top, gonna damage your hearing. It's kind of, PRX is hard to drive no matter what. Now, I'll say these are kind of right there. I think it's kind of fine. If you're in that 120 to 130 level, I think it's actually a really nice listen. But honestly, I really wasn't sure how well it was going to work. But when you listen to PRX on LDAC, on your high-quality streaming service, it is very, very nice. It's a really, really nice combo. I was kind of surprised. And along those lines, if you're actually out there shopping on AliExpress during the New Year holiday sale, if you happen to see PRX around that $32 price mark in US dollars, I would grab it. It's actually a really, really nice set. And at that price, it originally came out, I think, at $55, and I think it's probably the MSRP is about $55. But someone actually asked me a question about it yesterday, and they saw it. Canadian was the equivalent of $32. I'm like, yeah, go grab it at $32. It's a crazy set for $32. If you happen to grab both of these at $32 plus, 30 something for this, really, really nice combo. I was kind of impressed of how well they actually work together. So transparency, I would say not as transparent as I would want, but the treble's tilted down a little bit, which is better than the alternative of tilting the treble up. So instead of going a little bit brighter, they definitely went a little bit darker on the set. And again, on a set like a planar set, which is going to have a little bit more treble than perhaps other sets you may have, just tilting it down just a little bit gives you it's just a more relaxing version of a set that you may have heard on your wired, a little bit brighter. It definitely pairs well with the more energetic older hybrids. I think that's kind of what they were going for. But even with PRX, I will say it sounds a little bit more vocal because the upper treble is kind of tilted down, so you get more of an emphasis right in the vocal area. And then below, I'd say it almost sounded lusher than I expected. And normally I would complain, but for Earhooks and having a less fatiguing, more relaxed version of PRX, I think it actually is a very, very nice version of that. Probably a little bit better than I was expecting it to be. But on the more recent lower treble tuning, something like Zenith, it definitely shifts the balance a little bit slightly down. It doesn't project out as much around your head. It's kind of more of a in-your-head thing. You can kind of tell that the upper treble is definitely tilted down just a little bit, and it kind of affects that bit. But pushing that bit down so it doesn't project out just kind of gives you this lusher, more fuller style mids, and that's exactly what you hear on PRX. So PRX is a planar, so you can kind of hear planar technicalities in two areas. One is going to be right in the mids, kind of that vocal detail, that vocal textures, those things that happen right in the midsection, or you hear it right at the extension on treble, right, the far out treble. So on this set, on AN01, you're gonna hear it primarily in the vocals. Very detailed vocals, nice micro details. All those things are kind of right in the middle, as opposed to hearing them at the upper end, which is where you might hear on your dongle or your desktop. So I'd say that's sort of kind of my explanation of why I would say it's not as transparent as it will be on a dongle or your desktop set that you might listen to PRX on. So the ANC mode and transparency, and I would actually put this kind of at the bottom of my feature list. I would say this is the first version of KZ trying to get it to work. I think it actually kind of does work, but like everything KZ, it's going to go through iterations. They're going to figure out how to do it. I think the first thing is the 2 mics. I think that's going to be one limitation on compared to what they did on KZ Carol. I think the missing the forward mic, I think, is going to affect how they can actually do ANC. But in my opinion, IAMs already have decent isolation, right? You have really nice tips. They get a really nice seal. This is holding it into your ear a little bit more secure than you're expecting. Better isolation, better than TWSs ever do. It's just not clear what noise is passing through and what needs to be canceled. I thought that was actually a pretty tough problem. So as you're listening to PRX or your favorite IAM on these Earhooks, and you have background noise, what background noise is actually making it through into your ear so it's actually audible over the music. And I thought that was a harder problem and something that you really do need the forward mic to figure out. And it works really, really well on KZ Carol. But on this, I don't think they've quite figured out how to isolate the noise from just doing general purpose noise reduction, which is something that they did years ago. And ANC on TWS has improved so quickly, it's really hard to start over and compete against it. The newest generation of AI ANC is just amazingly good at isolating that noise for that reason. 3 mics, more mics on other TWS sets. All of those things are all trying to isolate the sound and only reduce the actual noise as opposed to reducing your music. And part of that isolation is a really nice computational challenge, and I think that's sort of where this set it sort of works, sort of not. You can sort of put on transparency mode and it'll try to pipe in music, but again, I think the microphones and their location and how they're trying to blend it with the music on the DSP and then pass it through, I think all of that was a pretty good first attempt at getting it to work, but certainly you will see other versions of KZ's noise cancellation and Earhooks that is get better and better as they go, as they iterate more and more, just like everything else, kind of how I started this conversation. Their whole Earhook series has been a series of iterations, each one getting better and better. So it'll be no different on ANC and transparency mode. So that is what I got on AN01. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.